Tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with a major development in the case of the two Michaels. 557 days after Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor were detained in China, prosecutors have now charged them with spying. It's an apparent move to pressure Ottawa to drop an extradition case against Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. The two men have been detained since December 2018, and they could face life in prison. But as Eric Sorensen reports, the Canadian government is trapped in a diplomatic dispute.
With an internal legal deadline approaching, China finally laid charges against two Canadians.
起诉书指控被告人
Both are accused of spying on state secrets for overseas interests. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor have been held in harsh conditions for 18 months. They were seized in China just days after Chinese executive for Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, was detained by Canadian authorities at the request of the United States.
We have continued to express our disappointment with the Chinese decision.
The Prime Minister expressed concern for the two men and their worried families, suggesting the Chinese have linked the two Michaels to Meng Wanzhou's detention here.
There obviously are no links except in politics on that. So we will continue to ask the Chinese and put pressure on the Chinese government to cease the arbitrary detention of these two Canadian citizens.
The opposition says the Prime Minister isn't standing up to China.
I think what we see from this government is a certain weakness and naivete when it comes to approaching the government of China.
Justin Trudeau has resisted calls to increase economic pressure and public outrage. This former ambassador to China says that has to change.
If you look at the strategy that has been followed so far, it has produced no result. In my view, the only language that China understands is one of firmness.
But raising the temperature with the Chinese risks setting back a diplomatic solution.
I think it's important that we've reached the phase of trying not to escalate tensions, but to manage them.
Critics accuse the Chinese of hostage diplomacy. When asked, the Chinese official tersely responded, "Ask the Canadian government about hostage diplomacy."
Neither side at the official level would like to frame it as such, because that isn't going to help us in a resolution.
Ottawa is ramping up pressure on the Chinese to grant the two Canadians consular access. It was suspended in January, say the Chinese, because of the pandemic. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
China's intelligence agency is accused of a sophisticated state-based cyber attack against the Australian government. Security experts say it's likely payback for banning Huawei from the country's 5G network, and after Australia demanded an independent inquiry into China's handling of COVID-19. The hacks, which have been happening for months, have targeted health and education departments as well as political organizations. A Chinese spokesperson says the communist government is firmly opposed to all forms of cyber attacks.